All right, so as they take their seats, this session is on commercial horizons, NASA's Lunar and Mars payload services. So we all know about CLPS, and then there's something I think they're referring to as COMPS now for the Mars payload services. And so we're going to talk about the innovation, the technology, and the cost effectiveness of those programs. So let me introduce our moderator for this one, Matt Wallace. He is the Solar System Exploration Director at JPL. Matt, take it away.
Thank you very much. Let's see, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Sounds like I'm on. Great, well, good afternoon, and welcome to the first panel. As noted, I'm Matt Wallace from JPL. I'm the moderator. We're going to talk about the Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, past, current, potential future, including projecting this capability into a Mars environment, into a Mars management model. Some of the topics we're going to hit here are successes, of course, some of the challenges and lessons learned that we've had so far in CLPS, the general CLPS programmatic construct relationship to both creating and to servicing the lunar economy. And then we're going to try to spend the last 15 minutes or so sort of pivoting into what does CLPS look like for a commercial Mars payload service. And then spend about 10 minutes taking questions, and of course, only easy questions in addition to the other rules. So I'd like the panel to go ahead and introduce themselves if they could. Start with Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, can y'all hear me? My name's Ray Allensworth. I'm the Spacecraft Program Director at Firefly Aerospace. So a lot of my portfolio has to do with managing the CLPS programs and the CLPS task orders that we have coming through Firefly. So I was able to help lead Blue Ghost Mission 1 and are continuing to support Mission 2, 3, and 4. But yeah, just thank you for having me today. Excited for the conversation.
Great, thanks, Ray. Yep. Steve.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Steve Clarke. I'm the Vice President for Space Programs at Astrobotic. Had a NASA career of 23 years. Been out in industry for a couple years now, trying to help push the lunar economy from the industry side. And I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to the questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trent Martin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Space Systems for Intuitive Machines. I manage all of our lunar infrastructure hardware that we build, everything from lunar landers to orbiters and in-space tugs. I've been in the small aerospace world since I left NASA in 2015 and had about 20 years with NASA before coming out into the small world.
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron Mitchell, Director of Product Management at Impulse Space. We're an in-space mobility company. Prior to this, I have been in the private industry for about 7 years, and before that I was an engineer at NASA JPL.
Thanks very much. And just by way of my own background, as mentioned, I've been running the Solar System Exploration Program. I spent a little time in industry as well, in commercial remote sensing, but most of my career has been spent in the Mars program. I was part of all 5 JPL Mars rover missions, and I led the Mars 2020 Perseverance mission that landed in 21. So let's go ahead and jump into the first topic set here. So I wanted to start with successes. Wanted to hear what some of the most important successes and milestones, your companies have had as you got into this unique program, and it may be technically or operationally, or it may be associated with payload activities. And how has that success, I think, influenced your feeling about the future of this program? So let's go ahead and start with you, Ray.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, talking about successes, particularly in the context of commercial successes, Blue Ghost Mission 1 is definitely the I'd say definitely the highlight of my career, but also one of the biggest things that has happened to the spacecraft department and also, Firefly. So being able to launch and land and fully operate through the lunar day into the lunar night. We had 10 diverse NASA payloads on board. We were able to manifest all 10 of them and fully accomplish all of their payload goals. So that was definitely a very significant commercial success for Firefly, but I also think it was a really big success for CLPS in general because it helped prove out many of the aspects that CLPS set out to accomplish. Lower costs, shots on goal, rapid, partnerships with the commercial market to the moon. And, I think there's been many successes for that, any amount of data. We've gotten a lot of data with very few numbers of attempts. So I think that really helped prove out that CLPS as a model is really successful.
Yeah, validating that model.
Yeah,
key
absolutely.
and important. Yeah. Steve?
So congratulations again to Firefly. I know it's been a while, but still, you guys deserve
Forever ago,
to get,
yeah.
yeah, probably seems like it, but I agree. I think for Astrobotic, we were the first CLPS provider to launch. Unfortunately, we ran into a problem early on with the mission. We were not able to land. However, we were able to fly the spacecraft for 10 days, turn on all of the payloads, get science data. In fact, 2 papers were published, peer-reviewed and so forth from the data. And we were able to mature the systems on board all the way up to TRL 9, in some cases 8 in a few others because we didn't actually land. So that helped us certainly look at the lessons learned from that mission and incorporate it into our next mission, Griffin Mission 1. And that is now a medium-sized class lander, which I think is very important going forward, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But it also, along with the CLPS model, NASA's our primary anchor customer, I think, for most of us. But I think could all say we've seen a diverse customer base gaining more interest in what we are doing on CLPS, such as Air Force Research Lab and particularly the international community as well, seeing a definite increase in international industry partnerships with U.S. commercial industry as well. So I really think the CLPS model is proving itself out now. We've got 4 missions under our belt under CLPS, with 1 complete success, a couple good partial successes, and then of course again Astrobotic didn't quite make it to the surface, but I think we're proving it out, and we'll see. We have 8 more missions awarded between now and 2028. So here we go.
Trent, yeah.
The pricing structure for CLPS allows us to do these shots on goal. We've managed to not only build an entire space program that included all the ground infrastructure, all the assets that you need to build spacecraft rapidly, control rooms, infrastructure at all of our ground stations, over a 5-year period with a relatively low cost by NASA standards. We managed to launch twice to the moon in a 1-year period. We have another one coming up next year and one after that. But more importantly, what it done is it has completely changed our company. We not only are CLPS now, we also have Lunar Terrain Vehicle, Fission Surface Power, and Near Space Network Services, our OMS contract that we have at Goddard, the Zephyr contract that we just got with the Texas Space Commission. All were developed simply because we had these CLPS contracts and allowed us to show that we had the capability to move quickly and integrate quickly and move forward as a company quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting. That extension into the rest of these other markets really came about because of your ability to start servicing the CLPS, demands. Yeah, Aaron, I want to turn it. I'll just point out, of course, Impulse was not part of the initial CLPS selection cycle, but you're playing in the same market here as these guys, right? Low cost, rapid development, vertically integrated types of things, and so, your perspective on this.
Yeah, so Impulse is at the very beginnings of defining what our lunar ambitions are, but I think it's fair to say that it's something that's in our crosshairs, and we do have successes, I think, to celebrate, which is we have 2 for 2 so far in launching spacecraft that operated in low Earth orbit, and we have a 3rd mission launching in just a few weeks, actually, on Transporter 15. So hopefully soon 3 for 3. And on top of that, because we are highly vertically integrated, every one of those missions is not just a success in terms of us demonstrating an integrated system, but a success in demonstrating success of all the design components that we've designed in-house, the internal subsystems, everything from avionics, radios, propulsion systems. And so all of those building pieces that we've put together, we like to take a very commercial approach, and part of that, I think, is making things that can be built on later in the future. And so all of those pieces, I think, will benefit us in the future when we try to go to the moon.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And of course, success is important, but sometimes we actually learn more from the places that we're challenged, get those lessons learned behind us. And so I am interested in hearing from the panel, what are some of the things that your organizations have learned, and how does that feed into how you're going to operate in the future? New paradigms are always difficult. There's always going to be new lessons to learn, and so it's important that we talk about those as well. So, Steve, yeah.
Thank you. Well, number of challenges, right, with this model. I think we've all experienced those. I'd say the number one for Astrobotic has been the supply chain management. With the CLPS task orders, I'm going to kind of describe them as each of them are unique or one-offs. And we have found, at least from our company standpoint, that when you go to suppliers and ask for, say, propellant tanks or engines or whatever, and it's for one mission, and then maybe your next mission isn't another 5 years off, it doesn't really provide good stability in the supply chain management. And so two things we've done is, one, we're doing more due diligence when we go out to suppliers for future proposals, doing site visits and so forth to ensure that they've got the experience and the background to be able to provide qualified spaceflight hardware to us. I would extend beyond that too, and this is kind of a lessons learned that we have provided feedback to NASA for the CLPS follow-on, CLPS 2.0, is perhaps bulk buy missions would help stabilize supply chain management. That way, if a company gets, say, 2 or 3 missions awarded at the same time, and then they can phase those builds, it also helps stabilize supply chain management so that suppliers will be able to keep their production lines going and not just do one unique mission for, say, between 5 years in between missions. So that's probably the number one for us. Lessons learned is supply chains.
Yeah, Trent.
Lessons learned. So the cost drives the risk levels, and CLPS has been a very cost-driven program. You're bidding on cost to win at cost. The costs are very, very low, so the risks go up. I spent a lot of time in the aerospace world at NASA. I understood the pendulum on this side, where your human space flight and failure is not an option, versus what we're doing on the CLPS side, where I buy a component, I expect it to work. The amount of testing that I do is minimal because all of that costs. A single failure of one of those items causes a failure of a mission, or causes you to end up on your side instead of upright. You add back in as you go. So the pendulum is swinging a little bit back towards this side, but you don't want it to go so far that your cost model changes. And so for us, it's just a matter of, where is that balance? We don't want that balance to go too far back to this side where the costs are just impossible to absorb. But at the same time, you have to be able to absorb a little bit of that. You have to be able to manage a little bit of that risk, and sometimes that means extra testing, extra costs. That's a place where our recommendation on CLPS 2.0 was a little more involvement from NASA on those areas where it's hard for businesses in general, all businesses, to go out and create the infrastructure that you need to test a very specialized system that's only needed for lunar landings. Perhaps systems that are only needed for lunar landings that are across the board and everyone would need them. Perhaps NASA could purchase those items and then offer them at price to the vendors. Something like that, as a way to ensure that the supply chain is exercised in the right ways, and we get systems that we need to ensure mission success.
Thanks. Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, we're a young company. We have a lot of run into lots of challenges on our way to space, but I think our lessons learned actually have been that there's always a new way that a vendor can mess up your mission, I think, and so we've learned to both. We've continuously relearned the lesson of how valuable it is to bring things in-house. And so that's why we've slowly brought more and more parts of our spacecraft systems in-house, as well as found ways to make sure that we are getting quality products from our vendors.
Yep, thank you. I think that's a common trend for most of our participants. Ray?
Yeah, definitely, ditto on a lot of that. The supply chain's really hard to deal with. Test facilities, I'd say, especially spacecraft level test facilities, there's probably single-digit number of test facilities that kind of hit the Venn diagram of capacity, capability, and availability, particularly for these really large vehicles. I think some of the other lessons that we've learned, though, maybe more on the positive side is how to deal with data. For example, I think data was something that was kind of an afterthought for us. We were really focused on just completing the core payload objectives. And then after the fact, we had a really significant amount of data, but we didn't really think about how we would manage that data, how we would organize it, how we would distribute it, how you would price it. And I think that's really exciting because it's kind of leading to new revenue streams. We're able to set up services, communication services, imaging services, and that's in addition to the core mission. So you're able to make those missions more productive. And I think that's a big lesson that we took out of mission 1, and we're incorporating into all of our future missions and things like our Oculus service.
Yeah, that's interesting. You get so focused on getting the initial mission done,
Yeah.
forget about the back end and the benefits
Yeah.
from that as well. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, thank you all. So I wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about the program, itself. It's really designed to, as I said before, bring in this new low-cost, rapid development paradigm. And it requires, and some of you have touched on this a little bit, but it requires a balance between your sponsor, NASA oversight, and really a lot of commercial autonomy in order to achieve the objectives at the price points you guys are targeting here. And so I'm kind of curious about, how you feel relative to that balance, where it is right now. And does that change as we go into the future, as we start looking at CLPS 2.0, these bigger systems, or as we start to pivot out into the Mars, opportunities? Let's go ahead and start with Trent on this one.
So our primary customer, NASA, is struggling, I think, a bit with what is that balance, oversight versus insight. On the CLPS program, it very much started as a complete insight-only type model. That has slowly moved a little bit towards oversight, not nearly as far as we've seen it move on other programs. In particular, where the government is looking for firm fixed price deals, but they don't operate them as if they're firm fixed price deals. They operate them as if they're cost plus deals. And so we end up with oversight that actually changes what was in the contract. And so that has been one of the key challenges that we've had is we understand it from the commercial side of, you asked for ABC, we're going to give you ABC. Now you want DEF, that's a change in scope. The struggle sometimes is in that communication back with the customer to say, well, I can do DEF, but there's a cost impact to DEF.
Sure.
Like I said, on the CLPS side, I think that's an excellent model that the government has used very effectively since 2018, at least in my opinion.
Okay, thanks. Aaron, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's, from an outside perspective, just looking at CLPS holistically, I think it's an unqualified success of a program, right? I think people can focus on the mishaps, but to me, getting one successful landing makes all the others worth it so far. And so if you look back at the level of NASA involvement and oversight that has been so far, the whole point of that, in my opinion, was to ensure that one of these first slew of missions was a success, and that's been achieved. And so now I think the question should be, how much can we back away from NASA? Like how much can NASA step back while still making sure that we achieve a rate of success that is commercially acceptable, which to me is the whole point of CLIPS.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I do think it's really important to balance the insight rather than oversight. I think maintaining commercial vendor autonomy, the ability to make key technical decisions, key programmatic decisions, I think is really important, and it's helped CLIPS be successful. So that's definitely something we're very big advocates for, particularly in the context of applying it to other, whether it's Mars or CLIPS 2.0. And I think there's many people in the CLIPS office that are excited to maintain that. There is some correction happening, but there's very few missions that have happened yet. So a level of learning and adjustment I think has always been expected in the CLIPS office. I think the other thing that we need to do moving forward is that, the intent of CLIPS is that we brought commercial partners with us. And so it wasn't ever the goal that these missions would be fully funded by NASA. It was the objective to bring additional payloads along with us. And so that's something that we're really trying to focus on at Firefly, and we're starting to see that happen with commercial partners coming in addition to the NASA partners.
Commercial payload partners.
Absolutely, yeah. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Mission 2, we've got a rover from the UAE. We have an
Sure.
Australian payload. And so they're about 50% of the commercial capacity actually on that mission. And I think that's really important because they help, validate the model and also bring in other sources of revenue to continue.
Right, yeah. Steve?
So I agree with everyone here on the panel. Let me amplify a few of those points. I think the commercial payloads is key here, and we don't want to lose sight of that. Yes, NASA has been the anchor customer and will continue to be that anchor customer going forward. However, we don't want to lose sight of bringing in those commercial payloads. And I had said earlier about the international partnerships. Like I said, we've been seeing a large increase in reach out from international industry and international agencies to fly on the CLIPS landers. What that does is it's really a global effort then, and the international partners don't have to develop their own landing systems, right? They can ride with us. I think that's key. It's really a fine balance between NASA oversight and insight. I mean, I've been on both sides of it, so has Trent. And he's right, you get too much oversight. If you put that pendulum over this, way over here, you're going to increase the cost, and then it starts diluting the purpose of CLIPS. Perhaps one way to look at it is the complexity of the missions. We've been seeing some tweaks to the request for, task orders from the CLIPS office as they've learned as well since 2018. But as they ask to fly more payloads, and more complex payloads and go to more complex landing locations, perhaps there's a little bit of more NASA oversight to help with that to ensure mission success. But what we don't want to do is go too far over on the pendulum. I kind of look at the Launch Services Program as a great example. They've been able to navigate that from the beginning with the launch service providers really well. In the early stages of SpaceX, NASA was asking for more insight and oversight. And there was a resistance initially, but then NASA was able to establish a really good partnership with them. I'm saying this because I was part of LSP when that was happening. And today they have a great partnership between NASA and SpaceX, I think. And we all have seen the success of SpaceX. I think we're going to see that in the CLIPS world as well. As more confidence gets built up within NASA and within the community, more successful landings, more successful missions. I think that's where you can back off a little bit on the oversight.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to turn to a topic that I'm curious about, which is basically the customer base. You guys have already talked a little bit about the growth in international opportunities, probably domestic as well, as the program starts to get stood up. And there's a little bit of a, CLIPS creating a lunar economy and CLIPS responding to the lunar economy, maybe a little bit of both. And I'm just kind of curious, relative to your perspective on, is that arriving at the pace that you expected it to arrive? Is it arriving in the way that you expected it to arrive? And what will it take to sustain that into the future so that these these programs and these capabilities are something that can be maintained. And so, yeah, let's start at the end. Aaron, with you.
So, like I said before, Impulse is new to the lunar game, but we actually have some experience selling commercial space for Mars lander missions. We stood up a first commercial mission to Mars with Relativity a few years back, and that's still in the works, launch date TBD. But in that experience, it was very interesting to see how much interest there was both from commercial operators as well as international governments in Mars missions. Despite a higher price tag than going to the moon, the prestige and the value of the science and the value of the mission sometimes outweighed that. So I think for both the moon and Mars, there is a growing interest, and at the end of the day, it's just a matter of getting the costs down. So we kind of believe in building this commercial foundation of the technologies and the flight heritage and the capability. And as soon as that reliability gets high enough that the costs can be worth it, I think we'll see both Moon and Mars interests grow.
Yeah, thanks. Great.
Yeah, so, talking about, commercialization and timing, I think one thing that is interesting is that we are seeing a lot of commercial interesting, but I do think it's a timing issue sometimes. So Mission 2, for example, I mentioned those international payloads that we got. We captured those prior to Mission 1's success. And so then after Mission 1, we have other payloads that are coming to talk to us, but Mission 2 is now too far down the road of integration. It's really hard to integrate those payloads, so now you look at 3 or 4. So I think tying back to something that I think you mentioned is bulk buys. I think that would really help the commercial market, because the more you can have predictability in location and timing, the commercial market will grow that much faster. Whereas right now it's kind of single task orders to single locations, and you're trying to match payloads in a really tight time frame. Most of these missions are 3 to 4 years long, so it can be really difficult to kind of capture the market that's coming up with these near-term missions. So I think things like that on mission, rather on CLPS 2.0, would be really helpful and further foster that commercial environment.
Okay, interesting. Steve?
Yeah, I think data services is another key commercial part of this, and I think we're going to see a huge growth in that. We need comm, we need data relay services that customers can buy the services from commercial companies. I think we're going to see a lot more interest there. I'm sure Trent can talk a little bit about that on the lunar comm side. But also, there are some, as the larger landers come online too, we can take technology development payloads for commercial customers, not just to serve, Artemis, but to test out this technology. Some of these could have some dual use for here on Earth as well. We saw it during Apollo, we saw it during shuttle program. A lot of technology that was developed for those programs were then commercialized, and we use them here on Earth. So I really expect to see more of that as we start making more successful landings and taking more tech dev to the lunar surface and test it out.
So it's easy for people to see the commercialized LEO, MEO, GEO. Everyone understands that you can launch, purely commercial satellites. That wasn't real in 2018 when Steve came up with CLPS. The idea was, could we do that? It's real. There is a commercial market. We are selling around 25% of our capacity to commercial entities. And we do it not only to the surface, but we do it as ride shares, because we buy the entire Falcon 9. We sell off some of the remaining to go to a TLI. We sell it as ride shares on our orbiters, so our satellites that we're using for communications on near space network services, we offer ride shares on those satellites for people who want to do science around the moon. Data services is a great example. That becomes a long-term tail that you get on contracts, and that's where the money can be made over longer periods of time rather than a 21-day mission or a month or 2 long mission. You're making money over 5-6 years as you have a satellite in orbit around the moon. And then Moon to Mars, are there technologies that we can develop in conjunction with commercial companies that feed new technologies that are needed for Mars that we do testing around the moon or on the moon. And we're starting to see that. We're seeing that in commercial companies that are coming in, asking us to go test out those technologies. We're also seeing that in commercial companies that are coming in saying, I want to use the resources of the moon for this, that, or the other. Will you go test out an experiment for me? I think the biggest challenge that we have is timing of those payloads. They often come in about a year prior to the mission. Well, it's a little late to come in and say, hey, I want a 30-kilogram rover on a mission that you're flying next year. And so one of the recommendations that we've had to CLPS 2.0 is go ahead and not only buy out NASA, go ahead and buy out a system, but make sure that we exclude a set aside, if you will, for commercialization to ensure that we don't build to the minimum. We build to something that has some capacity, so when these ride shares come last minute, we can sell that, offset the cost to the government, and build up that commercial market.
Yeah, thank you, Trent. Let's see, I'd like to just pivot a little bit here and kind of focus a bit more on what the future might look like beyond CLPS even maybe 2.0, and on the commercial Mars payload services. I'm not sure if it's pronounced CMIPS or I've heard about 14 different variants of this, but I'm just going to say CMIPS for now. Mars kind of changes the dynamic in several areas, right? I think perhaps one of the most fundamental is just the launch cadence. The orbital mechanics, dictate pretty much a launch once every 24, 26 months instead of a almost continuous launch opportunity. And many of those windows are relatively short. They're on the order of three weeks at times. It really puts kind of a premium on schedule management, and it changes the way you kind of launch and learn. I think CLPS was designed to be at a cost point where you could launch and you can tolerate a failure, or you can tolerate a partial success, and then roll that back into your business model. It's Mars may change that dynamic a little bit, or maybe not. I'd be interested in your perspective on that. Obviously, longer light times, more autonomy required, especially for the entry, descent, and landing capabilities. Different diurnal environment instead of a 14-day sort of day. You've got a roughly 24-hour day that you got to deal with deep thermal cycles. Aerothermal entry environment. So it's got a couple new characteristics and a few new challenges. And so you guys, I'm sure, have started to look ahead at that, and I just wanted to kind of, see what thoughts you had relative to how you have to transition to pivot yourselves into that, into that opportunity. So, right.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to go to Mars is extremely exciting. There are some challenges, the many that you named. I think one thing that we're trying to focus on in the near term is figure out what, maximize the amount of science, technology, and demonstration that we can utilize on the lunar surface, since you do have such high access to the moon. Pretty much every month you can go to the moon, so it's very quick, and there's a lot of things that are highly applicable to going to Mars. So mission 1, for example, we did a fully autonomous landing. Though that's technology that can be directly applied to Mars. Sure. I do think that the funding profile might be different for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. I do also think that, especially initially in the near term, that it will be largely a government-led activity. That demand signal for going to Mars, I do think will be very kind of on the front end, heavily, guided by the government. But, hopefully the eventuality is that the commercial comes with it. It just might take longer because those windows to even go to Mars are obviously so far and few between.
Right, yeah. Steve?
I agree with you, Ray. It's going to be mostly government-focused and funded in the beginning. Mars is a lot harder, I think, right? You got to, like you mentioned, Matt, and
Yeah.
well with your experience.
Right.
EDL is huge, right?
Sure.
So we're going to have to solve that on different scales of, JPL's done a great job with industry to solve that, but the cadence, the data lag, the comm lag, So I would think for CMPS, probably orbital data relay is going to be first. I think that's needed. I think we should start studying that now. We have a perfect opportunity to kind of look at the trade space and start kind of winnowing down what are the priorities to start the commercial Mars payload services. CLPS is not just landing, though. There are task orders that NASA can put in there to drop off spacecraft, not have to land. So there you go. There's part of the model there. Perhaps we start with that, but
As a first step.
as a first step.
Yeah, right.
But it would be great for industry and NASA to start talking about this and start having forums, once the government's open again, and start planning it, because now would be a great time to start planning for this and to maybe start putting in budget wedges. I think we saw that in the president's budget request for CMPS to start
We
that
did,
out,
yeah.
and start talking with the planetary folks and just get industry input, and let's start talking about how to take that first step.
Yeah, the real question is what is something that you could put on CMPS that is a viable alternative for commercial companies to do? And you hit it with data, position, navigation, and timing. Orbiters around Mars that are providing comm relays, which they do right now, and are aging, or position, navigation, and timing that help you with your landing on your autonomous landing that has to be done at Mars. We're also looking at our Zephyr spacecraft that we have with the Texas Space Commission that allows us to do reentry into Earth, drives the technology that we need not only for reentry from lunar sample return, but also entry into the Mars atmosphere. So commercial companies are off looking at that. I know there's a lot of commercial companies out here that are off looking at that. The question is, what could you do with, what could the government do with CMPS that is a viable commercial alternative to what has been done at Mars in the past? And I think the goal then is to reduce the cost. So again, you have to take a little more risk than what you would have taken in the past. Given that you have the 2-year cycle, it's harder to take that risk. So that pendulum definitely would swing back towards the middle rather than way over to the side. But it can't be as risky as we have been on CLPS. I don't believe it would be a viable model.
Yeah, I want to echo what Steve and Trent said. I think for Mars, building up the infrastructure is very important before we start taking many shots on goal, because every shot needs to carry everything with it, right? So if there is no PNT system, no data relay, then it needs to have, talking bigger antennas, more risky landing sequences, everything like that. So building up those layers of infrastructure prior is key, and I do think that's something that either NASA or commercial industry could help with in a more commercial fashion. But I think we need to build up those layers of infrastructure, and then make it so the actual final attempt is it adds as little extra difficulty as possible. And then the other thing I think is, the scale of the endeavor for Mars is so much larger than the Moon, and so in order to make it worthwhile, we should think larger. Larger missions have a better economies of scale, and that can help offset the cost investment.
Sure, right, yeah. Thank you. I think we're doing okay on time. I'm not sure who's got the hook out there, but given that, I thought I'd go through one more sort of quick cycle, give you guys a chance for any sort of final thoughts. I do want to start, however, with Steve. Steve was there at the beginning of CLPS. He was part of the folks that conceived of and generated this program, and it's interesting for us to have you, Steve, step back to your old self, think about what you were envisioning at that time versus where we are now, and where we're kind of going. I'd really be interested. I think we'd all be interested in sort of hearing your perspective, and then we'll kind of go around the horn here and give everybody sort of a last thought and open the floor for questions. But
yeah, thanks, and thanks to Trent for suggesting that during our preparation for this.
Yeah.
In 2018, I feel like there was a perfect alignment of leadership and risk that we wanted to take within NASA to start CLIPS. We did a lot of assessments of the previous commercial programs within NASA, like Commercial Crew, Commercial Cargo, LSP, all of those, and looked at what the best practices were from those programs and lessons learned to see if we could actually create a low-cost lunar service. And I got to give credit to Jim Bridenstine, who was the administrator of NASA at the time, and to our procurement office, and to Dr. Zabrukin. Everyone was willing to take the risk to lean forward and try this model. So, I mean, it was, I'll call what it was. It was an experiment. We wanted to see if this model would actually work and would it stick. I will tell you that I think it works. We've had 4 attempts now with, like I've already said, you know, Astrobotic didn't quite make it there, but we did get some great data. Intuitive Machines has made it to the surface. Yeah, we had some challenges there, but I'm sure they're learning from that as well. And certainly Firefly was completely successful. That's 4 missions now, and we've got 8 more already contracted for the future. I think we're seeing the value of it now. When we started it, I said, you know, about halfway through, we should kind of pause and do a lessons learned, and do we need to make some adjustments? I wasn't there for that assessment, but I know one was done, and I read the report on it. And we're starting to see some of the adjustments that NASA is doing with the future CLIPS task orders and what they're talking about on CLIPS 2.0. And the fact we're getting bipartisan support from the Hill, from ONB, to continue CLIPS, they see the value of it as well. We're seeing kind of what I'll call the sweet spot of pricing for the 150 kilogram class landers, I think, which we expected we would see. We knew there would be some fluctuation to see where that sweet spot would start settling out. We'll see that with the larger landers as we fly more of those missions as well. Did we get there as soon as I thought we would? Probably not. We actually thought we would get there maybe a few years earlier than the first attempts. You know, our first kind of market data indicated maybe that folks were farther along in the development effort. But once we got into it, you know, I've heard the saying, you know, space is hard and the moon is harder. It's true. You know, the Apollo program did it 6 times successfully. But now you're talking commercial entities that have had visions from startups to get to the point where we are today. So, you know, not just because I was part of the CLIPS effort to get it started, but I really do think the model works. Yes, it can be improved, and we're starting to see the improvements on it. We'll see tweaks as we go along, certainly. And then when we get to the CLIPS 2.0, I'm sure we'll get that started with NASA, and then adjustments will have to be made there as well. But the model works. I think it has really ignited the commercial lunar industry, and I think we're all seeing the growth as we all talked about. And so I think we should stay the course and, you know, strengthen this public-private partnership with NASA, other agencies as well, international agencies, and I think we're going to see more partnerships as we go forward to make this a stronger model. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, Trent.
CLIPS is not just about CLIPS. When we won our first CLIPS task order, we had 45 people in the company. We now have over 500. We don't have 500 people working on lunar landers. We have 500 people working on everything else I've mentioned today, and I didn't even mention our lunar reconnaissance orbiter team and shadow cam team out in Arizona. I didn't mention our recent purchase of Kinetics and their ability to help all spacecraft that are headed out into the solar system. And so the CLIPS model actually took several smaller companies and a couple of bigger companies and helped them focus on a commercial approach that could work, but grow their company so that they become stronger players in the industry. Yeah, we could have handed out those contracts to the large companies, and we could have spent a lot more money doing the things that we did. Maybe they would have been successful, maybe they wouldn't have been successful. At these price points, I don't think they could have been. But adding some new players into the mix has changed the industry a little bit. And so CLPS is not just about landing on the moon. CLPS is about changing an industry perspective of how you do things. And I think to that end, it has been extremely successful.
Thanks. Aaron?
Yeah, like I said before, I think CLPS is a complete success in my opinion. I think hopefully over the course of the next 8 missions, we'll see that be solidified even further as we get some more successful landings, I think, hopefully from also from more than one company. And I just hope, though, that the lesson taken away from CLPS is, like you said, it was a gamble, but it has paid off. And rather than just celebrating our success with CLPS and then going home, I think it's important that we learn and lean in on that success. So I hope that CLPS 2.0 is willing to go further. I think the same model can be applied other places, not just even beyond CMIPS, but also other parts of what NASA is trying to, anywhere where laying the groundwork for repeated missions is valuable, I think the CLPS model can be applied. So whether it's infrastructure like Lunar PNT and communications networks, Mars communications networks and PNT, even things like future space telescopes and things like that. I really think that this, what the model shows is not something unique to the moon, but just applies anywhere where you can take a technical difficult problem and break it into small enough pieces that the commercial industry can bite them off. So that's my hope that we can take away. And I guess I'll close with in the future with CLPS, I think one thing that's clear is we've hit the right price point for the 150 kilogram landers, but if in the future we're doubling or quadrupling that amount, the price or the cost is not going to double or quadruple, right? We're only going to do better, and so that's where I think we should lean in.
Okay, thanks. Ray?
Yeah, I think to take a little bit of a different angle on it, I think, there's 4 really exciting, relatively young companies up here, and, it seems appropriate we're on a university campus. I think, as a student, graduating, I think it's important to realize that very early in your career, you can come and work on really exciting missions. It doesn't have to be CLPS. Every company up here has really exciting programs, whether it's to Mars or anywhere else. The average age of operators in the Blue Ghost Mission 1 Ops Center was 28. I think that's really important. So I would just encourage all the students that are here today to really just, be curious, be excited, reach out, ask questions, and know that very early in your career you can be involved in something really important and exciting.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Yeah, my first mission was Mars Pathfinder. I worked on a rover that was this big. Our team was about, let's say, 40 engineers. And you can learn a lot, in these small teams where you're trying to do something, at low price, these kinds of price points and things. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Matt, if you don't mind me.
Please.
One other thought, and you made me think of it, Ray, was, we've been talking a lot about PNT and data services and landers. But there's so much more as well, right? There's the whole lunar infrastructure, the backbone that needs to get put in place to support Artemis, lunar surface power. That's huge. We have ongoing projects within Astrobotic working on that now with vertical solar array technology. You've heard about the FSP, right? The fission surface power, which I see both being very applicable to providing power on the lunar surface, and then you can apply that towards Mars. There's so much more, and CLPS could be used with the different class landers as well, not just our 4 companies, like you said, but there are other providers out there that could be taking this infrastructure to the moon to support the human exploration part of this as well. So there is a lot in the mix right now, and with CLPS getting established as a good model, you've got the larger landers too, that SpaceX is developing, and Blue as well. there's really going to be a need for a mix of landers because you're going to want to send science, and those could be the smaller landers. You want to send oxygen production units, so forth like that, maybe larger landers, and then you've got the crews. So all of that is going to be in the mix. And, you know, I love what you said about the students that are in the audience and maybe online. There's a lot of potential projects here that you could get involved with various companies, not just ours, to really make Artemis happen.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Let's see, I want to see if we can get some questions in, and I think we've got enough time for a few. I can kind of see hands out there. Do we have a microphone, or? All right, I'm not quite sure how we do the online questions. You're going to have to. All right.
Why don't we start over here on the right?
Good to see y'all again, and really enjoyed the talk. In this different paradigm of CLIPS, you know, the commercial model, if you will, the academic side has gotten used to functioning under an older model, you know, of the NASA-centric led missions. How do you see the academic role, and I'm not just talking about just sending students, how do you see the academic role meshing in this commercial model?
With respect to like academic payloads and that sort of thing?
Yes, and, I mean, writ
Okay.
large, big
Okay.
picture.
Yeah, okay. Anybody want to take a shot? Yeah, Trent.
I've seen over the last 5 years, the scientists really embracing this approach. They realize that they can get multiple shots on goal. They realize that they can do science in bits and pieces. I'll get this piece now, and then I'll add to another one. The challenge has been years and years of creating the scientists that want the ultimate mission that does everything. And that is not what we're doing in this model. And so that has been the challenge, trying to say, well, I don't have to have a mission that does everything. I can do these smaller pieces. But we brought scientists into our fold so that we could understand what that meant. We have Ben Bussey, we have Mark Robinson, you know, specifically on our teams so that when the scientists come, we can speak the right language and we can help them with what could we do? And with that, we've been able to sell data services to scientists that want to do research, European scientists in particular that want to do research on IM-2. We brought them into the fold. ESA paid for a little piece of that mission with the idea that it would follow on with another mission later that would expand on that science that they might get on IM-2. And so they would do that next one on IM-3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 25. And so that's how I'm seeing it evolve, but it's an evolving process at this point.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, go to the next one.
Okay, let's go ahead.
All right.
yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Mauricio. We're from the University of Arkansas State. And first of all, thank you for your time and getting to talk to us. So my question was concerning, you guys mentioned communication to Mars specifically. And given the coronal mass discharge being a big issue for satellites, what's the current plan for sort of protecting these relay satellites that would kind of transfer the information?
Protecting, just to be clear, protecting Mars orbiter comm satellites?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Anyone want to jump in?
Well, I know NASA Planetary Science Division is very interested in basically replacing the comm relay systems that are there now, right? Like MRO and Trent, you mentioned it, they're aging systems, still working, but aging. We've been talking with NASA about that as well, and probably other companies as well, as what are some viable commercial solutions for that. And I think NASA's going to be relying more on commercial industry to provide smaller, more capable spacecraft and provide those data and comm relay services in the future. There hasn't been, say, a request for proposal yet for those, as far as I know, but there are discussions on how to move forward with that. So I expect probably within the next year or so, we're going to hear more about, some commercial opportunities to provide those services.
I will tell you that what I've seen and we're currently building 5 comm satellites with position, navigation, and timing for the moon for NSNS as part of NSNS 2.2. What I've seen is that the commercial industry right now, who build LEO, MEO, and GEO satellites, firmly believes that they could put satellites around the moon, and they can't. What I found is that we go out, we get working with them, and they come back and say, "Oh, I really can't do that." So it is a unique environment around the moon. Obviously, it's even more unique to go to Mars. So you almost need a dedicated RFP to do it, or you need some kind of an infrastructure like CMPO that allows you a longer-term contract in place so that commercial companies have the capital that they would need to go off and produce the equipment that's required for those unique environments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, another question out there, or is there one online? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was very informative. I have a question. I think Trent in the group, when you talk about the project of CLIPS, you said one of the things that this project has brought in is that it helped smaller corporations and companies to develop and get into this business. What else have affected this? Because this is a phenomenon that we see that is happening. Is it just CLIPS or something else you think is kind of making this thing to happen?
Well, since you asked me specifically, I personally believe it's the firm fixed pricing approach that NASA has been using. Many of the larger companies are unwilling to go after the firm fixed price. They won't take that risk. Some of the smaller companies will take that risk and go off and bid those firm fixed price contracts. We will. It's kind of built into the way that we work. Now, we're not a small business any longer, but we definitely have grown to the point that now we're actively involved with helping small businesses grow along with us. We have many partners on our lunar terrain vehicle and our Near Space Network Services contract to ensure that the small businesses that are the backbone of what we do are also coming along with us.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in too. I think, in my opinion, that NASA CLIPS task orders, I think a lot of people were on the sideline waiting to see how this was going to work. And now that they've seen that it is working, and there have been 4 missions so far, and 8, like I said, 8 more to go, a lot of people got off the sidelines and started partnering with the smaller companies. Astrobotic was small, just like Intuitive Machines and Firefly when we started out. And now we're about 250 people. I think it started out as 5. So because of the confidence being built up and actually seeing missions and actually seeing the contract award amounts on these firm fixed price contracts, people are starting to realize this model is working. And I think that's going to continue to bring in more partnerships, more companies to jump in.
Yeah, Ray, go ahead.
I think the other thing that's really helped, going back to the firm fixed price contracts, is that it seems like the companies up here, certainly at Firefly, I'm sure at AB and IM as well, is that we've used that money really productively. So it was firm fixed price developed that technology for a single mission, but a lot of what you develop on there can be applied to a whole array of other products and programs. So at Firefly, for example, that has spun off to our Electra vehicle. We started as a lander, now we have an orbiter, and it's all scalable. So you can do larger landers now, and it was kind of built on these first few FFPs and technology that can be repeated and scaled and applied in different settings. And I think that's really helped make us all, successful.
Okay, thank you. Time for one more. All right.
Hi. Yeah, hi.
Okay,
this
got it.
was a beautiful talk, and it was really insightful on cases of how Artemis is going along. And I have just one question on the part of cislunar surveillance. With all these missions going within the next decade, how will all the companies will target the cislunar surveillance, because the traffic is gonna be tremendous. So any insights on that? Because I know some of the companies are working on this part, specifically our own lab is working on cislunar surveillance, but any particular insights on how the space traffic management would be in place?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, could you repeat cislunar services?
Go ahead. You want to repeat the?
I mean
question
the
is cislunar
cislunar
services.
traffic management.
Space traffic
Traffic
Space traffic
management.
management, yeah, I'm sorry for
It
that.
was specifically oriented towards that, yeah.
So the satellite
Yes.
systems that we're specifically building will, once we have our 5 satellites in place, our intent through NSNS is to provide that service through NASA. So a beacon off of any system that's on the surface or any system that's orbiting the moon, pinging off of our relay would be broadcast back to other people. So we would have essentially what you need to have your traffic model. NASA right now does that by analysis, but at some point in the future, we believe that we will have technologies in place, hardware in place that will provide you real-time locations of any piece of hardware in cislunar.
I think, to that point of kind of traffic in cislunar space, we're seeing a lot of traffic, for example, on S-band. So we're partnering with NASA and the Lunar Spectrum Management Group to move to X-band comm services and stuff like that. I think that's a really good example of partnering with government entities and agencies to help coordinate things like comms traffic in cislunar space. So you're starting to see those things, and I think NASA will continue to be involved for things like that to help coordinate and facilitate the communication across different commercial entities. But it's definitely a primary concern and something that comes up a lot.
I guess I'll just add too that the UN is looking at that as well from an international standpoint. The Office of Outer Space Affairs, I was there in June for a session, and they've started talking about how do you coordinate all of the various countries that want to go there, particularly China, US, right, and others. So it is certainly a topic that's being discussed, and I think we're going to see probably more of a push on that even on the international level.
Yep. Okay, thank you all. I want to thank the panel for a very vigorous and enjoyable and interesting conversation and discussion, and thank all of you for your questions and your attention. And I think that wraps up our first panel for the day. So thank you.